Don't be selfish, Mandy. It's for the family, right? It's not just for you alone. I couldn't help but laugh at my mother's pure words from the other end of the phone, completely free of doubt or malice. I chuckled silently, deep in my throat. Ah, I see. That's how it is. These people genuinely believe that my life, my efforts, and my assets all exist for their sake. That unwavering conviction, its absurdity, and the hopeless arrogance made me feel not just anger, but almost a kind of admiration. How interesting. Things are getting interesting. Just a few minutes ago, I received an email in my heavily encrypted mailbox from Mr. Simpson, the manager of a high-end catering company I occasionally use. The subject was important confirmation regarding the party hosted by Allison Ford. With a sense of unease at the unusual sense of urgency in the subject line, I opened the file, revealing shocking content. Organizer: Allison Ford. Venue: a seaside private villa I acquired solely to disconnect myself from the market noise, which I hadn't disclosed to anyone. Guest list: 82 people. Attached was a detailed estimate for an extravagant menu featuring the finest champagne, fresh foie gras, and black truffles. The total amount was comparable to the annual salary of a department head at a publicly traded company. In Mr. Simpson's polite message, it stated, "Since the name and address are closely related to Ms. Mandy Ford, I felt it necessary to confirm with the person herself." Ms. Allison Ford mentioned that it was on behalf of her sister, but given the exorbitant nature of the order and my recollection that Ms. Mandy Ford always arranges everything perfectly on her own, I reached out just in case. His professional concerns became the signal for me to declare war. It was a polite letter of accusation stating that my sister Allison was planning to gather 82 strangers and throw a party in the sanctuary I had acquired with my hard-earned money. I was not surprised. Ah, here we go again. My family has always had the habit of intruding uninvited into my territory and acting like it belongs to them. This was back when I still believed that house was my home. During my university days, Allison had jokingly spilled juice all over my laptop, which contained data for a financial model I had worked on all night. When I had just started my career, my father left a coffee cup on important documents I was preparing for my first overseas business trip, leaving a stain. For them, my room was just a storage space and my belongings were mere junk. Every time I protested, I was met with the same response. "We're family, so don't sweat the small stuff." This experience made me realize that I needed my own sanctuary that no one can invade. That's why, as soon as I became independent, I moved to a fortress-like apartment in the city with impressive security, physically and mentally distancing myself from them. My parents dug into my financial situation and embellished it to boast about me to relatives. The list goes on. To them, I am merely a convenient ATM, a bragging tool, a magic moneymaker. However, they do not even try to imagine how much training and sacrifice are involved in wielding that magic hammer. I quickly called my mother. I asked, in a business-like tone, stripped of all emotions, "How did you find out the location of the villa?" The answer was as expected, with a cheerful voice that seemed to imply she wanted to say how she meant well without any sense of guilt. "Oh, Mandy." I kindly opened the tax notice that was sent to you. It must be tough having such a grand mansion with all those taxes. But Allison said she was looking for a nice place to hold her university graduation party. Since you're not using it, we thought it would be perfect. Allison said she could brag about it to everyone, and she was so happy. All of those words stroked my nerves backwards, as if they were scraping my nerves with a file. But why is my mail still in that house in the first place? Oh, I see. That seaside villa was purchased through several paper companies and is my absolute sanctuary. However, as the final tax notice for real estate acquisition, the old address that was used for a short time when registering as a corporation remained like a ghost in a corner of the government's database. It was the only flaw in the perfect security I have built. Through that small crack, they sniffed and invaded like hyenas. Then, they opened the envelope as if it were their natural right to do so. It is an invasion of privacy and a crime. How shameless for her to call it kind. How could she consider it her natural right to offer my sanctuary without any hesitation, just to satisfy my sister's petty vanity? And when I calmly gave them the ultimatum to stop the party, that line came back to me. That seaside villa was a private sanctuary that I bought 2 years ago. Don't say anything, Mandy. It's for the sake of your family, right? It's not just for you. I coldly engraved those words into my heart. As a fund manager, I have calculated and built a portfolio of all risks and returns. However, I have not been able to cut the losses from only this unpredictable family, bound by the most irrational emotion called affection until now. But that's enough. I am tired of it. This is not simply to cut losses. This is a game. It's an educational game that kicks stupid players who don't understand the rules out of the market. No, from my life. Do I simply want them to feel regret? No, that's kind of lukewarm. It was necessary for me to deal them a blow to the extent that they can't even feel regret, to destroy their pride, values, and everything about their future. I would uproot the illusion of family that they believe in and decisively take away my existence that they have relied on. I hung up the phone and closed my eyes for a few seconds. The blood boiling with anger slowly cooled down with precise breathing like a metronome. I made a phone call using the shortcut dial on my desk. The person on the other end is the only one who understands me completely. My lover and the best accomplice in this game. Hello, Wesley? Hey, listen. I got tickets to the best show. Front row, prime seats. On the other end of the phone, I could hear his intellectual laughter. As I explained the situation, logically and somewhat joyfully, as if planning a new financial product, he said with genuine interest, "That sounds interesting. Your family always exceeds my imagination. It's as if they live in a world where the concept of risk management doesn't exist. So, what's my role? Am I just a part of the audience for this show? Or an accomplice? You're the accomplice. I want you to play the final boss, as my strongest guardian." At those words, my blood began to boil with joy once again. I turned back to the PC on my desk, glaring at the market charts displayed across 6 monitors. They were no longer just a series of numbers to me. They looked like abundant weapons and ammunition for the war that was about to begin. I am, on the surface, the representative of a small asset management company, but in reality, I'm a solitary fund manager moving vast amounts of capital on my own. It seems that on Wall Street, I'm referred to as the Silent Queen by a few insiders. True to the name, I never show my face in the media, quietly but boldly building my wealth beneath the surface. It has never been a glamorous path. I dedicated my youth in my 20s to research in financial engineering, earning a PhD, and I now struggle daily against the sleepless market at a major hedge fund. Even after becoming independent at 30, the lonely battle continues. The unpredictability of market distortions, even for AI, is essentially the irrational waves of panic and enthusiasm created by human collective psychology. By discovering and riding these waves, I have built my wealth. However, my family does not know of my efforts. At the beginning, I didn't see them coldly as though they were ugly parasites that were sucking the life out of me. On the contrary, I once loved and cherished my family. The dignity of my father, the smile of my mother, the innocence of my sister, these were precious things that I wanted to protect above all. That was why I studied with all my might and put in extraordinary effort. I believed that if I built wealth, my family would be happier. My father would be free from the anxieties of retirement. My mother could satisfy her wants without restraint, and Allison could chase her dreams. With the money I earned, I rebuilt our family home and paid off the mortgage. I also covered the tuition fees for Allison's private university. I truly believed that my money could buy their smiles and peace of mind. However, the reality was different. The wealth brought by my efforts did not make them happy. Instead, it merely inflated their greed and irresponsibility. They devoured my outstretched hand as if it were their entitlement, continuously demanding more. Thus, my heart gradually, yet surely, began to wear down. The time, energy, and immense financial resources I spent for them, all of it became nothing more than a pure debt to me. When I realized that, the illusion of us being a family vanished from my heart. What remained were cold numbers and a rational judgment devoid of emotion. I came to understand that the family I believed in back then never actually existed. The game plan this time is really simple. How terrifying I am as the host of parasites, and how helpless we are hammered to the bone and never have the energy to approach me again. To this end, they destroy the world and pride that they value the most to the point of being completely destroyed in the eyes of the public. Wesley is my best accomplice. He is the youngest skilled lawyer to become a partner at the largest law firm in the U.S., and he is a rare being who loves my logic and even enjoys my madness. We met at the trial of an economic case. I was the agent of the defendant company, and he was the plaintiff's agent. We sparked in the courtroom, but outside the courtroom, we were attracted to each other's sharpness and coolness. Isn't it interesting, Mandy? Your family has completely misunderstood the risks of your existence. It is a typical move of the information week. In the market, you're the type to be eaten by hyenas in an instant. Wesley said that on the phone and laughed when he asked me about my plan. Wesley, I want you to form the fastest team in charge of your firm's corporate legal affairs, especially M&A. Please update the real estate registration. Of course, but what about my reward? The special seats on the show and my love. What more do you want? Haha, I understand, my queen. We laughed together like demons. From that point on, the procedures progressed at an artistic speed. Wesley's team completed the real estate sales contract and registration process, which normally takes several weeks, in just 48 hours using all legal means, online systems, and personal connections. The ownership was transferred from the paper company I established to Wesley personally. By routing the flow of funds through several foreign accounts, we complicated the money trail, making it nearly impossible to trace. It was as if we were completing a complex puzzle. We had perfectly assembled the scheme for the sale of the villa. In response to Wesley's message notifying me that the registration was complete, I simply replied, "First hurdle cleared." And then, on the fateful day. It was 2 hours before the party was scheduled to start at 3 p.m. I projected the footage from multiple high-performance security cameras secretly installed on the villa's property onto a private screen in the downtown office. Of course, Wesley was aware of their existence. This was our front row seat for an online viewing. The monitor was divided into 6 screens, monitoring the stage from every angle: the front gate, the entrance, the poolside, and the garden. In my hand was chilled top-quality champagne. At 2 p.m., the first prey appeared in the camera frame. It was a large truck from the catering company. Following that, various vendors carrying party decorations and DJ equipment came. They looked puzzled in front of the heavy iron gate that was firmly closed. Then, as if he were a stage actor, Wesley appeared calmly. Dressed in a dark suit made in Italy, he was the impregnable guardian. He spoke to the vendors and showed them documents in a clear file. At first, the vendors had skeptical expressions, but soon their faces changed to confusion and resignation as they reluctantly climbed back into their trucks and retreated. It was truly a sight. It was as if a thick glass plate was suddenly placed right in front of a line of ants. At 2:30 p.m., after the catering staff retreated and silence returned to the front of the gate, the main characters of the day finally arrived. Out came the young people, innocent and foolish, dressed head to toe in branded items that they must have rented. At the center of it all was Allison, the star of the day, fluttering her dress and wearing a beaming smile. Surrounded by her friends, she was basking in the cheers as if to say she was the center of the world. In the background, our parents were displaying satisfied expressions as they graciously greeted the invited guests and their parents. They looked pleased with their daughters, or rather someone else's, display of wealth. I projected the footage of the scene at the gate onto the private screen and raised the microphone sensitivity to the maximum. I couldn't afford to miss a single word of the exchange that was about to happen. Allison, feeling like a queen, strode towards the gate and naturally pressed the intercom button. However, The heavy iron gate remained silent. She pressed the button repeatedly this time, filled with irritation. "Hey, what are you doing? Caretaker, are you there?" It was at that moment. A man quietly appeared on the other side of the gate. Dressed in a dark Italian suit, he exuded an aura of calm that felt out of place in the festive atmosphere. Wesley. He glanced at Allison and her friends as if appraising them, then calmly spoke. "Excuse me, but may I ask what you all are here for?" Allison looked at Wesley up and down and laughed through her nose. "Huh? Who are you? The caretaker here? I don't recognize you. Just open the gate already. The party is about to start." "I'm sorry, but I cannot do that as I am not the caretaker here," Wesley replied without changing his expression. "I am the owner of this land and building." At those words, Allison and the others fell silent in an instant. "Owner? What are you talking about? I don't understand. This is my sister, Mandy Ford's house. Of course we have the right to use it. Open it up quickly." Allison's high-pitched voice rang clearly in my office. Wesley then responded in a calm voice devoid of any sentiment through the speaker. "As I've already mentioned, I am the current owner of this land and building, Wesley. I formally concluded a sales contract with Mandy Ford the other day. Here is the proof." On the monitor, I could see Wesley thrusting a copy of the registration certificate and the sales contract through the gap in the gate. My mother let out hysterical screams. "That's a lie. It must be a lie. Mandy would never do something like that without telling us. You've deceived my daughter, haven't you?" My father, looking frantic, pulled out his smartphone and desperately tapped my number. But of course, it wouldn't connect. I thoroughly enjoyed that laughable farce with a champagne glass in one hand. What a great show. It's beyond my expectations. As I murmured in satisfaction, Wesley, still connected on the speakerphone, responded while stifling laughter. "Oh, I think you can hear it, but the scene is just so spectacular." Allison collapsed and cried. "Your mom is on the verge of fainting." And the masterpiece is the guests' reaction. More than half of them, including those who are in the blind spot of your camera, are filming this farce with their smartphones. There are even people who are politely streaming live on SNS. The hashtags are probably luxury party canceled and mysterious lawyer appears by now, and it's going to be a festive event. It's not the best show. Wesley, it's about time for the finale. Please finish it. Okay, my queen. I saw Wesley standing in front of the gate with a loudspeaker he had taken out from somewhere. His appearance is like a leader declaring a revolution. "Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet. I am Wesley, the current owner of this land and building. I have heard that a party hosted by Ms. Allison Ford is to be held here today, but that is a complete misunderstanding and there may be fraudulent activities by the organizer. This land is my personal property, and I do not permit the holding of any parties." The invited guests were in an uproar. Wesley didn't care and continued in a clearer voice. "Any further stay will be considered as trespassing that meets the constituent requirements of the crime of home invasion stipulated in the criminal code, and we will immediately report it to the police. We have recorded all of you with this security camera. Please leave immediately. In addition, we would like to inform you that we may formally claim damages against the organizer Allison Ford at a later date for the emotional pain I personally suffered due to the chaos at today's party and the disruption of business due to the cancellation of online business meetings with important clients scheduled for today." The last word was the end. Allison collapsed from her knees, and her father pulled out his waist with a thud. As if scattering spider babies, the invited guests got into the car and ran away. Some of them point at Allison and mock her. All that was left was the brutal wreckage that was supposed to be decorations for the party, and the pitiful figures of my supposed family members, as if they embodied the end of the world. I raised my glass gracefully towards them on the screen. Checkmate. 1 week later. The curtain rises on the final stage. The setting is the conference room in Wesley's law firm, where a heavy mahogany table is placed. Three people who look like they have become shells of their former selves sit on the other side of the table. They resemble defendants waiting for a verdict in a solemn courtroom. Mandy, why would you do something so cruel? In a frail voice, my exhausted mother murmurs. She looked as if she had aged 10 years in 1 week. Why? That's an interesting question. You should know the answer better than anyone. You made me this way, I said, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, with an archaic smile on my face. My father, trying to maintain his authority as a parent, shook his head at Wesley, who sat calmly beside me, and spoke in a trembling voice. Mandy, that's enough. This farce should end. Tell him to cancel the sales contract. He will surely listen to you if you do so sincerely. It's our family matter. We can talk after that. At those words, Wesley shrugged, genuinely amused. I slammed the thick file I had prepared onto the table. A heavy sound echoed through the conference room. How can you still talk such nonsense? Fine, let me show you a cold reality that will wake you up. As I slowly turned the pages of the file one by one, I began to read their offenses calmly and coldly, as if presenting to investors by a fund manager. First, 10 years ago. The PC that had the financial model I stayed up all month to create for a university competition. Allison, you spilled juice on it while joking around with your friends, deleting all the data. The repair and data recovery costs were $1,500. You just said, sorry, it wasn't intentional. Mom and Dad, you both scolded me, saying, if it's something important, do it in your own room. Including the prize money and recognition I would have gained if I had won that competition, the opportunity loss evaluated at current monetary value and compounded interest amounts to at least $5,000. Allison mumbled. That was such a long time ago. But I ignored her and continued. Next, 8 years ago. The travel tickets for two that I received as a gift for the performance award at the first company I worked for. Dad, you sold them to a gift certificate shop without my permission for the sake of your relative's golf competition. The face value was $3,000. You said you were busy anyway, so you wouldn't go. If we assume it was invested for 8 years in an S&P 500 index fund at an annual interest rate of 5%, the current value would be about $4,430. Of course, the priceless emotional damages I suffered are not included. My father looked down and covered his face. My mother attempted to appeal emotionally, saying, but we are family. But I coldly cut her off. The label family is not a blanket permission to do anything. It's merely one form of contract for coexistence. And you have unilaterally broken the contract and continued to exploit me. There is still more. The fact that you borrowed money from acquaintances using my name, and that you tried to forge my signature to sign a contract without my permission. I have everything recorded, every single event. My words became not just a mere list, but a thick indictment vividly detailing their greed and insensitivity. And the cherry on top is this. I threw the quote from the catering company and the draft of the complaint against Allison as the defendant prepared by Wesley on the table. Document forgery, trespassing, and interference with business. What you have done is not just a family dispute. It's a serious crime which requires repayments for lost profits due to failed negotiations with Wesley's client. The catering company is also preparing to claim cancellation fees and damages against you. You are now standing at the brink of bankruptcy, Allison. The three of them could no longer say anything. They could only stare at the documents in front of them and at me with faces pale with fear. What you have lost is not the party venue. It's me, the goose that lays the golden eggs. From now on, I won't lift a finger for you. Your debts, your troubles, your future, none of it has anything to do with me. Do you understand? The game's over. I quietly stood up. Wesley followed suit. Goodbye. Don't ever show your face in front of me again. The heavy sound of the conference room door closing echoed for me like the sound of a salute, announcing the beginning of a new life. After leaving that conference room, my world became more vibrant than ever before, and every sound I heard felt like the music for a festival. I have finally managed to shed the heavy, damp family slime that had clung to me for years entirely. Sitting in the passenger seat of Wesley's car, resting my head on his shoulder, I laughed from the bottom of my heart. That was the best show ever. Thank you, Wesley. Without you, I could never have crafted such a perfect script up to this point. No need to thank me, Mandy. I had the privilege of watching the great screenwriter and leading actress right beside me. Plus, I enjoyed it too. So, what's the next act? Well, let's first build our castle. A true sanctuary that no one can invade. A few months later, I read in a report from Wesley's subordinate that the catering company had filed a formal lawsuit, citing fraudulent acts of signing a contract under the guise of having the right to hold events, along with contract breaches against Allison. Social media backlash, friends turning away, and a trial ensued. In the end, it seems my father used his meager retirement savings to settle the case. The compensation amount, despite Wesley intervening to reduce the initial demand, was $18,000. My father ended up giving up all his modest dreams after retirement. I merely glanced at the document, as if reading a corporate financial report, without much emotion. Sympathy? Guilt? Such irrational noise had long been excluded from my emotional portfolio. What they paid was simply the cost for their ignorance and arrogance. The rules of the market can be unforgiving at times, but they are always absolute. We left the land vacant under Wesley's name. Then, we commissioned a world-renowned Pritzker Prize-winning architect to begin constructing an entirely new fortress just for us, an enclave that does not cater to anyone, nor allows any intrusion, a sanctuary solely for the two of us. One sunny afternoon, we visited the construction site together. The raw concrete walls stood out vividly against the clear blue sky. At that moment, my smartphone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored such a call, but for some reason, I picked it up. Perhaps it was a gut feeling. Hello? On the other end of the line was a frail, hoarse voice, reminiscent of an old woman. It took me a few seconds to realize it was my mother. Is this Mandy? Please, help me. Dad. Summarizing my mother's words, it went like this. My father, shocked by losing his retirement money and suffering from years of unhealthy living, recently collapsed from a cerebral infarction and was hospitalized. Fortunately, his life was saved, but he is left with paralysis on his right side, and it is said he will require nursing care for the rest of his life. Allison has completely isolated herself due to an incident that was spread on social media, dropping out of university and retreating into her home. The family that has lost their former authority, pride, and friends is said to be on the brink of collapse. Please, Mandy. We can't live anymore without you. We're not asking for money. At least, can't you come to visit your dad? You are our only. I silently listened to her lament until the end, leaning against the cold concrete wall that was under construction. Her trembling voice, the timing of her breaths. It felt like a calculated performance to evoke emotional reactions. A bad investment. I won't buy it. And I said just one thing. So what? My mother gasped. I could sense the air on the other end of the phone freezing. So what are you saying? This is your story, isn't it? It has nothing to do with me. I've already dropped out of the cast. I'm not even a viewer. Do you understand? I looked up at the massive concrete wall under construction. It seemed like a beautiful boundary symbolizing a break from the past. And let me give you one piece of advice. From now on, don't ever search for my phone number from anywhere and call me again. If you do it again, I will sue you personally under the stalker regulation law. You haven't forgotten what kind of work my boyfriend does, have you? Wesley is a professional in that field. I could hear my mother take a strained breath on the other end of the line. Before she could say anything, I hung up. I then added that number to my blocked list and handed my smartphone to Wesley. Find out how this number was obtained. We need to completely seal off any potential security holes. We have to nip the risk in the bud while it's still small. Sure. Wesley took my smartphone and gently stroked my hair. Mandy, you really? Am I a bad girl? As I mischievously laughed, he quietly shook his head. No, you are. A soul freer than anyone else. Standing next to me was my irreplaceable partner, the greatest asset who holds infinite value in the form of unassailable peace. The construction of my new portfolio has now quietly begun.